Okay, this is part 3 of building my cruising dinghy for 2, the bedbug. This shows my planked and flipped hull. At the beginning this was just the frames and the sole piece upside down on a strong back. This planked and flipped hull shows the completion. This planked and flipped hull shows the completion of what I hope is going to be the hardest part of the build. And there were some moments where I was really struggling to make progress in this thing. It starts with transom and this forwardmost bulkhead that is going to be a tabernacle for a rotating mast. Then I planked the bottom flush with the sole, put a layer of glass on that, and then did these 2 lapped planks and spiled a spiling board and fit those to the frames, and then flipped it and took that frame off, and this is where it's at now. And I got to get a look at it for the first time, and I'm really happy with how this thing looks right now. I start with some work on the forwardmost bulkhead. This is going to have a tabernacle that the mast rotates up into. Some cardstock makes a pattern for a piece that's going to transfer the weight of the mast down to the a lateral support on the sole. A common way that a rotating mast gets held up in a tabernacle like this is that a line at the bottom pulls the bottom of the mast flush with the face of the bulkhead. So I gotta cut that hole out so I can run a line through it from inside the cockpit. Sorry, not the cockpit. This will be that storage area up forward in the boat. And then I glue on this lateral piece of hardwood that'll hold a cleat to cleat it off. That lateral piece of roughly cut softwood is where this is going to meet the deck, and the deck's going to go right on top of that. And now I need to cut out where the mast can slip through, and then I'm going to make a little piece on there of hardwood for to make a pivot point for the mast to rotate on. This tabernacle configuration is new for me, and it's a bit complicated. So I'm hoping it turns out well. Finally, I'm going to cut a bevel, and this is going to be the last bulkhead that gets attached to the sole. And then last thing at the bow is the stem. It's going to be a plumb stem. And so this, for the planks to meet, that angle changes how the planks meet the stem. So I measured out and drew a line to cut the bevel on those. And I'm just going to take a hand plane and go to town, hogging out this wood to make that bevel. At the same time, it's like mind-numbing and thoughtless, but it's also rewarding just to kind of go to town with the hand plane and take off wood. And then a bracket to hold this stem in place while I plank the boat. And I try to get it solid in place and plumb with the level on there, but when I put my first plank on there, it twisted a little bit and caused a little bit of an issue, which you might be able to see later in the video. And then the transom is going to be a little bit of a rake, and it's going to attach at 2 points at the sole and at the deck. And so I got to cut a bevel on both of those, and then put it on, screw it on first to make sure everything lines up before I put on glue. Fortunately, it looks like I measured things correctly on this one, and PL Premium is going to go on there. And this clip of the PL Premium squeeze out is just one of those rewarding sensory clips that I could watch all day. So now I can move on to planking, but I'm going to cut bevels before I fit planks. The chine log on the sole, and then also the, I guess you'd call them cleats on these bulkheads on these frames. All these, you got to come in on the sole a little bit, and then come in on the bevel on the frame cleat a little bit, and just kind of bring them down to meet each other and try to smooth everything out as they come together. This is another one of those hand plane jobs that really just makes building a wooden boat like this feel like you're a real woodworker. Even though I have little to no skills working with wood, at least it feels good, and you kind of get that like soulful experience of building a wooden boat. To fit planks, I'm going to make a spiling board. This is just going to be 16 feet long by 4 or 5 inches wide. And so at first I just cut some 8-inch by 4-inch strips. These get glued together with just like a butt joint. They get glued together at an angle because that plank is going to have some curve in it. A spiling board is such a neat trick. I start just by drawing 2 arcs from a single point, and this is so that I have a radius that I can refer to later. So if my compass gets out of tune, I can come back and fix it. If you're unfamiliar with how a spiling board works, let me explain it real quick. You use your compass with a set radius that you're going to use throughout the whole process. And then you put the non-drawing end, that needle, on a point that you want to be able to find later. And then with your needle on that point, you draw an arc from that point. That arc on your spiling board, you're going to use it to come back and find that point. Basically, it's just like magic of geometry, that if you have the same radius, you can put the needle of your compass anywhere on that arc and draw one arc, and then move the needle to another spot on that arc and draw another arc. And where these 2 new drawn arcs intersect should be exactly the point where your needle was in the beginning. So as neat as a strategy spiling is, I don't trust myself to make a plank exactly to fit based on the measurements I did spiling. So I end up cutting everything an inch or 2 wide and then bringing it into my measurement from there. And so with this plank fitting on one side, I flip it upside down and check to make sure it fits both sides of the boat right. And that means that I can go and trace the dimensions of this rough plank for the starboard side to make a rough plank for the port side. This would be the right spot to use epoxy to butt joint these planks together. Tight bond or like wood glue will just dissolve with enough water exposure. And the construction adhesive PL Premium that I like, even though I think it is a little bit more water resistant, it just when you're gluing over a large surface area like this, it can move and it can expand, and it's just hard to get the right clamping pressure, and it's pretty difficult to work with. This plank ended up okay, but planks later in the build, I had the butt joint slide down the slope of my garage and end up on only one plank and ruin a glue up. These simple disposable clamps aren't too hard to work with. I want to be able to get in there and clamp down that plank at the chine without adding a bunch of screws into that chine log. My wife asked me if I was okay the other day. She said, "You're not working on the boat too much anymore. What's wrong?" I'll show you what I was doing. These planks get a lot of twist at the bow. And so what I was doing is I would clamp them and twist them a little bit, then let it sit for a day or two, and then come in and add a little bit more on that clamp. And being patient on this allowed these, these garboard planks to come in and actually not destroy themselves in that twist. So now with that twist having been made, I secure these planks where they're going to end up finally, and I can bring in some dimensions to where that plank is actually going to end up and get it fine-tune the fit. Well, it looks like it's fitting good, and it's not even straining to make the twist up to here. I am terrified that all this is just going to crack and come apart up front. But I'm going to slow fit it first, make sure it's all good, then I'll come back in and add glue. I'm still scared. I am bringing this front part in, and I'm hearing a little like tick-tack, little tiny cracks. But I got that mated all the way at the bow, and it's essentially mated up here. And I mean, really I could put a screw here and screw it all from the back. But I ain't ready to let this stay yet. Alright, today is glue day on the first plank. This sat overnight. I don't see anything cracking. That ain't perfect, but I can deal with that. And I think it's gonna work. This is like my last chance to keep any twist from getting put into the boat when I put on this really torqued plank. I gotta check everything. I'm gonna check, make sure this front end is still level. I'm gonna check to make sure that the stem is still level. Here's my level, the front end. Actually straighten that out just a touch, and it still looks good. On the stem, with the plank secured at about midships, I could come in and add adhesive to about the forward third of the boat, come in and fasten that down, and then I could come back and remove those screws at midships and then work backwards with adhesive. Where this plank doesn't have so much twist in it that a mechanical fastener might introduce a crack, I'm fine with putting some screws into that chine log apparently. That might be it. Let's take a look. Ooh, I missed one. You think I can do it with the camera in my hand? All right, last screw. All right, let's do a look over. See how this thing is. Mixed squeeze out at the top here. There's a bead around a lot of that, which looks good. There's a spot I don't like. Right here. I'm gonna come back in right there, put another screw in. I don't like that. A lot of good squeeze out at the top. I like this. Little bit shy right there, but it's probably a bevel issue. A little bit shy here, and that'll get filled with epoxy when I glass all this, and I might round it off to glue. A little bit of stress cracks in there. I don't like that, but I'm going to glass over all that. Hopefully I get glass on and those cracks don't propagate. Looks good. I mean, I'm happy with it. So I'm happy that the plank, I'm ecstatic that the plank is on and it's not falling apart. And so this hardest step, scariest step in the boat build is halfway done. Another half on the other side. Except for putting a little bit of twist in the stem, the starboard plank went on smoothly. And so now I can remove fasteners and start cleaning things up to prep for glass. I'm going to put on a layer of glass before I do any planking. I hope that it'll make it just like a little bit cleaner. Taking a hand plane to that chine reveals the glue lines. I mean, it's starting to look really pretty. Rounding that chine with the hand plane is another one of those just like rewarding, soulful woodworking tasks with the hand plane. And then the last step before I'm ready for glass is filling in screw holes with some thickened epoxy. Man, I do not like fiberglass work, and I'm not really any good at it. I think this would probably turn out better if I came at it with a roller. Hopefully nobody gets a good view at the bottom of the boat to see how bad my fiberglass job is. So it's back to cutting the bevel with the hand plane, and I had to sharpen it a few times as I'm cutting through that glass. And then bringing out that same spiling board again. I think I might have cut it and straightened it out though, because these planks have less curve. And again, I'm just rough cutting these planks based on how I like scribe them from Spiling. But I did have to remember to leave an extra inch and a half on the bottom of the boards, because that's room for them to lap over the garboard. And so this plank gets screwed onto the frames, and I can scribe that final measurement to cut to just right off the frames. Check to make sure that the same plank dimensions will fit both sides of the boat, and then I can make a matching plank, so starboard and port planks will be the same. Above the waterline, I'm using the Type on 3 to butt joint these planks. It's going to get less water exposure, and that Type on's easier to work with. And a piece of glass tape on the outside of these butt joints will keep them from having any weak spots or weird bends.
Therefore, we must instead embrace empathy and diversity. This is what historian Tom Holland means when he says that we no longer ask the notebook against us always okay.
This is a little rabbit plane I made out of some spare oak and a wood file or a metal file that I grinded down and was careful not to make it lose its temper. This way I can cut that rabbit down at the bow and bring these planks in flush at the very bow end. I realized that with that foredeck still fastened onto the strong back and all the hole planked on top of that, I'm not going to be able to get in there and clean up any epoxy that gets squeezed out. Maybe I just wanted to get a good clip of me up in the bow of the boat, but I cut out kind of a rough opening where that hatch is going to go in the fore end of the boat, so I could tuck my head up in there and clean up some squeeze out. And then finally, this plank that's going to get lapped attachment to the garboard, just round over that edge that's going to be exposed, and then I'm ready to start mixing epoxy. All the surfaces that are going to get fastened with the epoxy get wetted first with unthickened epoxy, and I screw that plank down. And then with the most careful attention to detail of measurements with precision, I mix that 2-to-1 Rocca epoxy and stir it up before I thicken it. And I'm going to come back in with that thickened epoxy, and that's what's going to fill in these gaps as I attach the lapped part of this plank. The Ziploc bag to mix the thickened epoxy, to mix the silica as you thicken it up, I really like this technique. Some people buy cake decorating piping bags, but you just mix it in a Ziploc like this and then cut the corner off, and it works great. So I only use epoxy where the lap is, and then at the bow and the transom. I'm more comfortable using PL Premium in general, and so where I don't need to fill a gap, like on the frames where those meet the plank, I use PL Premium. that went well. I'm gonna get under there and check squeeze out. See how things look underneath.
Oh yeah.
That's okay. The PL looks good. Look at that PL squeeze out. Epoxy even looks pretty good too. And then that little bit of space at the angle of the lapped joint, I come back in and fill that with epoxy to add a little bit of strength. And then that top plank goes on just like the previous one did, and the boat is ready to flip. This has been a good shelf, but now I gotta find a new spot for my tools. With enough tie downs and some ratchet straps, I'm able to flip this thing by myself, and this stage of the boat build is done.
I also have some things from my Russian background that I got over Eastern Europe.
Very, very, very dark aspect to the grooming gangs that we.
The question, the problem is that's not how
And I got to get a look at it for the first time, and I'm really happy with how this thing looks right now. You know, it's upside down and you're not sure if it's gonna look okay when you flip it. And, I think the bow is pretty, even though I think the stern from the inside looks pretty. But I could understand some people not liking that. The look of the stern from about midships outside. So I got some work to do, but right now, really happy with how this thing is going. Bedbug build, part 3.